So I would normally be a little bit torn here, and it was interesting. He very quickly like took a sip out of his coffee, and it was just like one of those things where I felt like he was trying to do the like reverse tell of like, what's up everyone? As promised, I'm going to be writing down every single hand I played in the WSOP main event 2021 and sharing those hands with everybody who signs up for a free account at livespot.co/Jaka. That's where I do my paid for group coaching event, but also have some free content there as well. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you're still going to get to see this short little video where I go through 3 hands and analyze them. But if you want to get the email with all the hand histories in written format, then you just got to go to livespot.co/Jaka. When you get here, hit the subscribe button. You just got to throw in your email and name, and I will email you with all my hand histories. You just got to do it before the end of November 2021. Okay, so in the email, you're going to get a link from me. The link is going to be to this doc. This is where I write down all my hand histories every time I play live. Normally, I don't write down every single hand. I just write the hands that I have issues with, that I want to analyze later, or maybe just hands that I thought were interesting. This is a practice that everybody should be doing if you want to improve and get better at poker. There's 3 things I will tell people you need to do if you want to be a successful player. I'll go through 2 of them later, but one of them is just documenting your hands, whether it's online or live. So if you're not already doing this, you should do it. Pay attention to how I'm writing these hands, the syntax I'm using. It's a lot of abbreviations. I'm not writing unnecessary information. They're not sentences. I'm spacing them out so it's easy to read and quickly skim through and share with other people. I see sometimes people writing big, long paragraphs. Very unnecessary. So take from this, and I think it's nice to do in a shared doc. That way you have access from your computer and your phone, but worst case, at least just do it in a notepad in your phone. So everyone who signed up, as I said, is going to be getting the link to this doc so they can see all these hands. I played 29 hands. I'm going to keep doing this after every single day. So even if I make the final table, I'm going to have every single hand until the final table. Today, in this video right now, I'm going to review 3 of the hands. We're going to go through them and I'm going to analyze them. And if you want to see analysis on the rest of the hand, I'm going to be doing a group coaching session on November 12th at 5 p.m. PST, reviewing the rest of them. This is the normal group coaching sessions that I do every week. It's $99 a month to sign up for this. Or you could just pop into these sessions for $33. Sometimes there's some more advanced sessions for $49. We also have a student Discord group where people can discuss hands. And most importantly, I really guide you through how to become a better player. A lot of times you show up for a coaching training site and you really just get thrown into all this information. You have no idea where to start. So I see this as a little bit of an in-between one-on-one coaching and a training site where I'm actually guiding you, telling you what videos to watch based on your skill level, where you're at. There's a lot of interaction in my group coaching sessions where I actually get to know you and hear your thought process and correct your thought process. I also provide a lot of resources in case you don't know what type of charts should you be buying and looking at, and what tools should you use, and does it make sense if you're not a professional? Most of my students are kind of intermediate skill level who are in these group coaching sessions. All right, that said, I'll give you some more details on the group coaching a little later for those that are interested. Let's jump into some of these hands. So the first one here, it's not necessarily in order that we're going through. I just picked some of the ones that I thought were interesting, worth talking about. So first of all, I just want to say the vibe at my main event table, probably similar to the vibe at a lot of tables. It's a lot of people really overvaluing their tournament life. This is like the big event they saved up to come play. They booked their week in Vegas. They don't want to bust early. They want to at least make it to day 2. So as a result, people don't go for thin enough value. They try to avoid spots where pots might get bloated. They don't, they overfold. So we're going to be using that to our advantage. I'm trying to take advantage of players. Another vibe I got from the table was there's some good players that maybe weren't great players, but they were good players and pros, and they kind of wanted to stay out of some of the better players, more aggressive players' way, especially players that are playing a more high variance style, because they're looking around and they're like, man, all these tables are so soft. I don't want to bust out early against this tricky player when there's so much easy money laying around. So that was kind of the vibe between some of the pros and the recreationals, and we're going to try to take that to our advantage. So here we open sixes from middle position, big blind call. Ace, queen, five with two spades. So in this spot, we have a giant range advantage. Generally, the opener has a lot of Broadway cards in their range, and the big blind has a lot of cards 8 through 4 in their range. Now, I just want to help you visualize that a little bit, because a lot of times people have the misconception saying, well, the big blind also has Broadway cards too, and we have some small cards, and the big blind's calling all these suited hands, right, that are also big cards. And there's just a lot of confusion going on here. So what you want to pay attention to is, first of all, the left side of these charts are offsuit hands, and there's way more combinations of offsuit hands compared to suited hands. 8-4 offsuit, for example, we're folding. There's 12 combinations of 8-4 offsuit, but there's only 4 combinations of 8-4 suited. So these represent a lot more hands than these do here. So look at how there's not very many deuces in the big blind's range. There's not a lot of threes, but there's a little bit more. And as we get to fours, now they start flatting some of these fours here. There's more fives, there's more sixes, more sevens, there's more eights. So that's why 4s through 8s are very heavy big blind cards. That's what a lot of their range is condensed on, because a lot of the good Broadway stuff, they're even 3-betting, right? So that's just something you want to remember in the back of your head, that the 8 through 4 really hits the big blind. And that's why when the card has 3 cards, 8 through 4, or even 2, you're going to be doing a lot more checking. Whereas when there's a face card on the board, you get to do more c-betting. And if you want to learn more about c-betting versus the big blind, I have an entire 2-hour lesson we did on it. All our lessons are recorded, so you can go and find them on in this content library here. I have a lesson where we talk about c-betting versus the big blind. When do you do big bets? When do you use small bets? When do you have a heavy check back range? How to recognize different boards, and what your check back range should look like so that you're balanced and don't get owned on turns. So anyways, here we're betting a lot, probably close to our entire range. We could do some checking, but we're doing a lot of betting with our range here, especially with something like pocket sixes that needs protection. We could also do a lot of big betting on this board, because not only do we have a giant range advantage, we have a huge nut advantage. And we really benefit with some big bets here. So I bet 3K into 3,700. And what's nice about this is it accomplishes a few things. Let's pull this up visually, actually. So here's our betting strategy on this board. You can see we're doing a lot of big betting. This is 6 big blinds into a 7 big blind pot, which is preferred. We do some checking. It's usually these direct underpairs like jacks and tens, and maybe some of our worst queens, some of our worst aces. Notice you don't really check stuff like sixes and fours, whereas you check stuff like nines and tens, and that's because these hands needs more protection. So that's where we're betting them. It's doing a lot of big betting with sixes. So what happens when we bet big? Well, let's look. What happens when we bet small, first of all? They have all these floats. King 10, King Jack. They're probably going to peel these 7s and 8s, especially if they have a spade in it. Whereas when we bet big, we get pure folds out of most of those. We start getting a bunch of queens to fold, and we get hands like 10 Jack to fold, King 10 to start folding. Of course, if they have a spade, they're probably going to continue, or a backdoor club draw. But in general, we should be getting a lot of them to fold. And if they don't and they overcall those, it's okay, because we're not just betting sixes big, right? We're also betting big with our aces with really nice kickers, and so on. So another thing that happens when we bet this big size is they fold most of their fives. Right, when you're betting close to 80% pot, they're probably going to pitch away a 5. Maybe they're calling a couple that have a spade in it, as you could see in the bottom right, the combos. Whereas if we had bet small, they're calling pretty much all their 5s. Yep. And you might say, well, we have pocket 6s. Don't we want a 5 to call? Well, we're not thinking just about how we're playing our hand. We're trying to play our entire range a certain way, right? So we're doing these big bets when we have king high, 8 high, 9 high, and that's where we really want the 5 to fold. So, with our pure, high card bluffs and with our 6s, we're doing big bets. The 6s benefits from folding out, some these queens and these gut shots and all these better pairs and that kind of thing. And you might say, well, we're beating king 10, 10 jack. Why do we want them to fold? Well, if we check back, they're probably going to bluff us off the hand. It's going to be really hard to call down with pocket 6s on this type of board. So anyways, I bet here. We got called, and the turn was a 5. And our opponent decided to lead here. That's a pretty common card to lead on when bottom pair pairs. But the mistake this player made was maybe he hadn't studied, big c-bet sizes on the flop. So he failed to acknowledge that he folded away all of his 5s. So him leading on this card doesn't really make sense. What 5s does he have? Unless he had 5x of spades. So when he leads here, we get to attack it quite a bit because he's very capped. He doesn't have a lot of 5s. Let's look at his range, right? What the green is his range. He has a bunch of aces, some queens, a bunch of spade draws. He doesn't really have too many strong aces, right? Ace king, ace queen. He's doing a lot of 3-betting pre-flop. Maybe check raising on the flop. So yeah, he's really handcuffed in this situation. And when he leads, we get to do a lot of value raising and a lot of bluffing. You see 6s does do quite a bit of raising. So I did instantly recognize that, and I did raise here, and opponent folded pretty quickly. I'm guessing he had a weak ace, and he was thinking he can kind of get a cheap showdown and get some value out of maybe whatever other pairs I might have. Maybe he had a flush draw. Maybe a 10 jack, king jack. It's also nice that I could have something like 5, 6 of hearts here. So he's not going to be blocking some of my 5, 6 combos. But yeah, the key thing that was interesting here was just opponent not realizing how my big bet changes his range construction to not have many 5s. And I was able to attack that card very heavily. I think even if he checked, I probably was going to just bet really big on this turn. Because again, I didn't think he had many 5s left in his range. So I probably was going to go something like, if he checked, I was going to bet like 7K or maybe even 12, 13K in overbet. And just put him in a position where he's got to call down with ace X, very light. And that's really tough in the main event because I might overbet the river as well. So yeah, that was my plan here. By betting big on the turn, he also has to fold a bunch of flush draws. So let's see if Payo likes what I was planning if he checked. So you do see we're doing a ton of overbetting. It actually prefers overbetting, betting 23 into a pot of 19. It doesn't do much of the smaller betting. And it looks like it really does like using 6s. Not every time, but about half the time. It's bluffing with stuff like 6s, stuff with 8, 9, suited, and so on. Some king 10. Really just playing very aggressively here. So, okay, let's move on to the next hand. Okay, so I included this hand to analyze because it's actually very similar. We have 6s. We open from early this time. Big blind calls. Flop is 2 big cards. I went with the small size this time. I totally could have gone with the big size. That's definitely the preferred size. This player was a recreational. I felt like he was going to probably give up stuff like 7s and 8s pretty easily. I didn't feel like he was going to check raise for value as much as he should. I didn't feel like he was going to check raise some stuff like ace 10 with a club, maybe some king 9, some 8-9 type stuff with a club. That's going to blow me off my hand. So normally you want to bet a little bit bigger to discourage that type of check raise. And I just didn't feel like that was necessary versus player. So a little bit exploitative. I did feel like he was over folding a bit. And that was kind of why I went and bet this turn. My logic here was that we get 9-10 to fold, which is flowing a lot of equity. I felt pretty confident I would get all club draws to fold unless it was like a king high, ace high flush draw. I actually felt this player might overfold a queen because this was still pretty early in the day and I wasn't really playing super aggressive yet. Later in the day, I had a lot of momentum. I was winning a lot of hot pots and maybe it would have been harder to get someone off a queen here, but it just struck me as the type of guy that doesn't want to have to call down light with queen 4 here, you know, with queen 4 spades or something like that here. So this is generally a hand that probably should just be checking back, but because I thought my opponent was overfolding a queen, I decided to go for it. The main thing here is on the jack, it's just our opponent has a lot of jacks and it's just not a card we're going to be going too crazy on. We definitely would with some better hands. I actually think if I had pocket 4s, yeah, I believe I looked this up on Pile and pocket 4s was doing betting on this turn. And that's because 4s gets pocket 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s to fold, right? So the worse your hand is, the more likely you should be to bluff with it. Now, if this turn was a blank, something like the 5 of hearts, then my barrel would have been very good because now we're getting him off a bunch of jacks that are in a very tough spot when we bet, like 2/3 the pot. We bet here and he did fold, so it worked out. He tanked for a little bit before folding, so I really do feel like he had some sort of queen or king 10 or clubs based on the amount of time he tanked. So I think my read was right, he was going to overfold. But given I didn't have that read, like I said, I should be checking here. But again, if this was a 5 of hearts, a deuce, even a 7, I can just go for it here and get a lot of equity to fold, right? Yeah, we're beating 9-10, king 10, king 9. But again, if it goes check, check, they're going to bet. And I'm going to have a really hard time calling down with this hand. So, yeah, a little bit of an exploitative bet here on the turn. All right, this next hand, we're not going to analyze this entire hand. I just want to talk about the pre-flop portion of this hand. But you can see the rest of this hand on the doc for all of you who are going to be getting the doc emailed to you. This was a recreational business guy. Regardless, that doesn't really matter in this spot. I'm 3-betting here either way. So I made a pretty large 3-bet. We're so deep. People don't 3-bet big enough here. I see a lot of 2.5 and 3x's. That would be fine if we were about 30, 40 big blinds deep. But this deep, you really want to get in there and go closer to 3.5 to 4x. More importantly, the thing I want to talk about here is just how much you need to 3-bet. Because a lot of people flat here, and their reasoning for flatting is usually something like, I don't want to inflate the pot, it's early in the main event, I don't want to get into a big pot and bust out, and they're kind of protecting their tournament life. But that's not the right way to think about it. You're causing yourself to bleed a lot of chips by doing this. So first of all, let's look at the 3-bet strategy here. So here, after the button opens, we're in the small blind, 100 big blinds deep. All the orange is 3-betting. So notice we're 3-betting 18% of the time, calling 9% of the time, folding the rest. So we're 3-betting about double the amount of hands than we're calling. So what that's telling you is we should be doing very little calling in this spot. Some, but mostly 3-betting. Why is that? A couple things driving that. So first of all, out of the small blind, it just really sucks to call and let the big blind squeeze, or even when the big blind calls, because playing out of position, we all know, sucks. Playing out of position versus 2 people double sucks. It's twice as bad. So you're trying to avoid that out of position versus two people. You're trying to avoid the big blind squeezing and, you know, blowing you off equity. And a big important thing a lot of people don't think about is the SPR. SPR is stack to pot ratio. And the deeper the stacks, the bigger the stack to pot ratio, the more advantage the in position player has. So so just to make sure you know what stack to pot ratio is here, you just take the pot and you take your stack and you divide it by the pot. So we have 90 big blinds here and there's 22 big blinds in the pot. So that's an SPR of about 4, right? Whereas if we had just called, then it looks like there would have been maybe 7.5 big blinds in the pot, and we have 100 big blinds, or I guess we're betting closer to 8 big blinds in the pot. So 100 divided by 8 is around 12. So we took the SPR down from 12 all the way down to 4. So why does the deeper the stacks give the in position player a bigger advantage? Well, just think about it, right? Let's say you're playing 5 big blind poker, right? I always like to use extreme cases. Say you're 5 big blinds deep or 10 big blinds deep, button min raises, and you call on the big blind. You guys are 8 big blinds deep now, and you flop a king with king 5 offsuit. It's like you got actually any pair. You flop any pair, you're getting it in, right? There's not really much they can do to outplay you or get you off the hand. It's kind of straightforward. Now let's say you're 300 big blinds deep. Well, they can bluff you off second pair. They could even bluff you off top pair. They can overbet and put you in all these tough spots. They could blow you off your draws like you saw me do in the previous hand to my opponent. The deeper you are, the more the in position player gets to take advantage of those type of things, which gives them a greater edge. That's why you want to lower the SPR and 3-bet a lot when you're 100 bigs deep here. So to kind of compare, let's look at if you were only 50 big blinds deep here. So here on the left, we have the exact same scenario, except it's 50 big blinds deep here. And notice the call now is 13% and the 3-betting is 15%. So it's almost even now. And that's because we're not as incentivized to get the SPR down. And there's also the issue of if we 3-bet some of these hands like King 10, Queen 10, Queen Jack, Ace Jack, we're shallow enough that in position might jam all in or 4-bet, and then we get blown off equity. Whereas in this 100 big blinds spot, you're not getting 4-bet that often at those stack sizes. So you're much more likely to get to see a flop and realize equity. Or even if you do get 4-bet, you're deep enough that you can peel. So that's kind of what's going on there. So yeah, just really a bit of a rant to try to encourage you guys to 3-bet more in this spot. Yeah, you are going to get in more big pots and you might be more likely to bust out, but you're also going to chip up a lot. And all those times you chip up, you're less likely to bust out, right? So you don't want to be the player that's going to slow death. You want to be the player that's 3-betting, taking some risk, but also building up a big stack, because someone who's 3x their starting stack is way less likely to get knocked out than someone going to a slow bleed. It's just higher variance, in the short run playing, 3-betting and stuff, but it's going to make you last longer and get deeper in the tournament. Okay, so we have one more hand we're going to analyze today. It was the hand I posted on Twitter, which was a pretty interesting spot. Before we do that, I just want to pause and for a few minutes tell you a little bit more about the group coaching I'm doing at LifeSpot for those of you who are interested. So I've really structured my group coaching around the philosophy that I personally believe is the 3 things that you just need to maintain and do to be a long-term winning player. That's the 3 things that I've always done myself. The first thing is you consume some sort of learning content. That's what we offer here with the group coaching and the recorded sessions that you can go back and watch. Number 2 is documenting your hands and reviewing them on your own. So, I give you these Quip docs and show you, how to write the syntax. You guys are going to get that here yourself. That's really just some motivation some people need to stop being lazy about it. There's also, using Poker Tracker and those things for your online games to review hands that way and to tag hands, just to kind of have a structured process of how and when you do that. And the third thing is having a community, a WhatsApp group, at least 4 or 5 people that are equal or slightly better skill level than you that you can talk hands with, and not just hands, but also about other resources, right? What ranges should I be using? What sites should I play? What, about game selection. There's just so much info out there that being able to share with other players, you might realize you're wasting your time, or there's some really good resources that everyone is using and you're not using them, or you don't know how to. So that having that group is really important. And the reason I say you want people to be similar or slightly better skill level than you is when people are way better or way worse, it just doesn't work because there's not enough value to be gained from both sides. So we do also have a student Discord group, and that's, how we kind of accomplish that third part. We have a hand history channel. We have channels for, online poker sites about, when there's good series announced or what games to be playing in, about different programs, Hold'em resources calculator, pile solver for people that are a little more advanced or want to get into that. And we have a money exchange channel to help get money on and off sites. Also study review, so students meet up on their own and study, so it's a bit of a tight-knit community. And students have the ability to launch their own study sessions here on LiveSpot, where anybody from the group can just go and join. So we already have one student who does it weekly, Craig. They're meeting in 2 days, it looks like, and that's completely self-run. And lastly, I just want to talk about what to expect out of the content on my site. So after you sign up for the monthly membership, which gets you access to all the previous sessions, and of course the ongoing ones for $99 a month, I'm going to send you this link of most important previous sessions to go back and watch. And the way I've constructed this is the same way I recommend anyone study, the same way I also prioritize my own studying. So when you show up at any poker site or you find training material, it's a bit overwhelming. There's so much stuff out there. And honestly, it's impossible to go and study every part of the game tree. I can't do it. No one can. So you have to prioritize. So the way you prioritize is you want to pick the spots that come up most often and where you're playing for the most amount of chips. So for example, if you don't have your pre-flop ranges right, your flop play is going to be screwed up. If your c-betting strategy is off or your check raising strategy is off, then your turn strategy is going to be off. So that's why the first video here is constructing 3-bet ranges without having to memorize charts. Of course, it's important to have access to charts, but you want to be able to play without having to memorize and know how to adapt when someone's playing looser than a chart shows or tighter than a chart shows. So that's why this session is really important. It kind of gives you the logic to go with it. C-betting versus the big blind, check raising versus the big blind, facing a check raise in the big blind. So this set of 3 videos, super duper important, because think about it. In a tournament, what is the most common scenario? Someone raises and the big blind calls, because you're supposed to call super wide from the big blind. So you're over and over and over again playing this spot, c-betting versus the big blind or facing a c-bet versus the big blind. So you should be an expert at this spot. If you're really good at this spot and nothing else, then you can probably get by and do okay. Next up after that, we have videos. I have a session on double barreling opportunities, and then the opposite perspective, calling down versus double barrels and triple barrels. Post-flop play in 3-bet pots, that's important because 3-bet pots happen reasonably often and you're playing for a lot more chips. So those are also very important to prioritize. Lastly, I have c-betting out of position because that's a spot that people get pretty wrong. A lot of people c-bet too much. Sometimes people don't c-bet enough in certain spots. So I'm not going to get into that. You can watch the video. All that's there. But yeah, all of this is organized in a way that really gives you an extremely strong fundamental. And I get a lot of people ask me like, is your teaching, are you teaching GTO stuff or is it non-GTO stuff? And there's a big misconception there. Just because you're studying GTO, it doesn't necessarily mean you're playing GTO. GTO just means you understand how two spots play, how two ranges play against each other in different spots. And you understand, who has the range advantage and who gets to do more betting and who has, more top pairs and more straight draws in certain spots and who's going to have to fold. It doesn't mean you have to play like that, but having that understanding is going to help your decisions quite a bit. So you want to understand that stuff, but you also want to have the exploitative understanding of how to adjust when someone's playing too loose, too tight, too scared, based on your reads. And I definitely talk about a lot of that stuff in my sessions as I go through spots and explain the reads I had and so on. So all those previous sessions are here under content library. You can always just purchase a single session that's upcoming or already recorded. It's usually $33 unless it's a premium session, then it's $49. Anytime you purchase a single session, you'll always have access to the recording for that. Or you could just pay $99 and get access to the entire library and all ongoing sessions. So without further ado, let's get into this last hand. So here, a recreational limps the button. We got king 5 in the small blind. I just call. I don't really think this is the hand I want to be raising with. We're super deep. If I'm going to raise with some weaker hands, I would rather them be stuff like 5-7 suited or something like that. That's going to get better hand, or even, I'm going to do a lot of them like 5-6 suited, 7-8 suited, some of those that might get some king X type hands to fold. But here, I don't want to put more chips in the pot when he might be limping with king 8, king 9, king 10, and he's going to be calling all those. I'm okay just limping here. Big blind checks. This was a what it seemed like was a pro player. I check. He leads out half pot. Pretty straightforward call here. We got second pair with overcard. Here is where it gets dicey. He overbets. And in this spot, we're decently high up on our range. We're probably doing a lot of check raising with two pairs and sets. We might even check raise or lead out some of our nines. So we have some nines still in our range, or a decent amount of nines, and a lot of fives. We have some deuces. We have some ace highs, probably a lot of ace highs. We have some 6-7, some 7-8, some 3-4, some spade draws. So when you say your whole range out like that, we're decently high in our range. When someone overbets or bets really big, you need to fold more. So we're definitely going to be folding more. Normally, I would say we're really calling most of our fives in the turn, but once they overbet, we should be folding a lot of our fives. But we got to call with something, right? So the few fives we're probably going to call with are going to be the ones with an overcard with it. Right, because that just gives us more outs. This player might be overbetting with a jack, which I think would be a smart play. They could be doing it, especially if it's a good jack with a good kicker, they could be doing it with a ace-9, king-9 type hand for value still. And the fact that we have the spade, we also could consider bluffing on some spade rivers. Because if we're in here with, king 6 of spades or king whatever spades, we're probably going to call this turn. Especially considering our king high might be good. Our opponent could have stuff like 7-8, 6-8, 3-4, maybe even just some like 10-6 type stuff with a diamond and a spade in their hand. So I did call down here. River, awful card. 7-10 gets there, we don't block it. Queen 10 gets there, we don't block it. There's some spade draws that missed. We do have a spade in our hand. So I wasn't crazy about this river. I was thinking to possibly fold. Opponent bets 5,500, which is a smallish size. I think it's a pretty smart size. I actually really like the bet sizing because a lot of things got there. Another reason I hated this 8 was I think some of his bluffs were 7-8, 6-8, 6-7, right? So that 8 really connects a lot of those bluffs. So I really hated that card. But he's not going to bet an 8, right? So when he bets this size, he's really saying he's got a jack, or he's got something like ace 9, king 9 maybe. I think that would be an interesting hand to keep value betting. So I would normally be a little bit torn here, and it was interesting. He very quickly like took a sip out of his coffee, and it was just like one of those things where I felt like he was trying to do the like reverse tell of like, oh, like really comfortable. He was sitting in the 1 seat and I was in the 9 seat. I don't know what he thought I thought of him, but I thought that he was probably a pro. I didn't think that he necessarily thought that I knew that, because he'd just kind of been quiet. I don't have a good view on him, but I'm very observant. I'm looking at who people are talking to on break, and I try to gather as much information as I can. But I could see him as like kind of being disguised as maybe a recreational, or him thinking he was. So maybe he was trying to like, it was like the way he grabbed the coffee and drank, it was just like very unnatural. So my instinct was like, this is fake. Like it wasn't like a natural, like he was grabbing a cup of coffee to drink. It was very forced. So then I asked myself, why would this guy, so if my read is right that that was like a purposeful thing he's doing, like why would he force that? You know, maybe he's trying to, you know, this is the main event. Maybe he's trying to act like, oh, he's real comfortable taking a sip out of his coffee. So you can't rely on those reads 100%, right? But this was a spot I was probably very 50-50 on, and it was enough to push me over the edge, and I made the call. And he did have 4-3 of diamonds. I forgot to show it, but yeah, he had 4-3 of diamonds here. So it worked out. And a really important thing to remember in these spots that a lot of people miss is how often you need. Sometimes a lot of my students would be like, oh, I know he has it though. Like, why would I call here? Like, I know he has it, right? Because there are spots where you really do feel like he probably has it, but who cares if he probably has it? The question is, how often do you need to be right here? So you take your calculator, 5,500, that's how much he bet. So that's how much we're risking, divided by the final pot if we win, 24,200. 24,000, so 5,500 divided by 24,200. That comes out to 22.7%. That means you just need to win this pot more than 22% of the time to be profitable. So even if you know the person probably has it, that's not the question. The question is, you know, if I'm in the scenario 100 times and I call here every single time with this scenario, will I win at least 23 times out of those 100? And if the answer is probably yes, then you should be calling because you're getting great odds. All right, that's about it for us, folks. We're gonna call it here. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you subscribe to livespot.co/Jaka, livespot.co/Jaka. Anyone who does it before the end of this month, you're gonna get emailed all my hand histories from the main event, not just day one, but every single day. So you have that to look forward to. And if you want to learn more from me and you're serious about working on your game, I want to join our community, we'd love to see you on there. I'm also pretty responsive on Twitter and Instagram, so you're welcome to follow me there at Faraz Jaka on both of those. I lots of times will tweet or post videos of some strategy here and there if you're just looking for some free content. So yeah, follow me and connect with me. I try to keep myself pretty available to talk to potential students or just anyone looking for advice. Also, I will be posting some more free content now and then here on YouTube, along with some fun vlogs and some of my trips. So don't forget to hit the subscribe and notify button below. All right, peace out, everyone. See you later.